I don't know where this came from, but there's a random leaf hanging out in, in my marker collection. So that's cool. I just really like bell peppers. Hey everybody, it's Moonshine. Welcome back. It's been a while, so today is another self-care art day, and we're gonna draw us some grapes. So basically, I'm just gonna go over a quick recap of what my art process is like, and then we're gonna get into some stories. You may hear some cats in the background, maybe some dogs. I do have cats and I do have dogs, so soundproofing my environment is pretty tricky, but I do my best. Basically, as always, I start with a sketch with reference. I will list a link to my reference photo in the description down below. I found it off of Pinterest, but I did find the source of where it came from. So after I finish my sketch, I refine it a bit more. I refine the sketch and then I kind of erase the rough sketch, which kind of just lays out proportions. And then I go in and it's the moment of truth with markers. And then I add some details with colored pencils. So you'll be seeing that process throughout this video. And so yeah, let's get on with the story times, I guess. So, why grapes? Well, first of all, grapes are just delicious. They're so good. I love grapes. Do you guys peel the skin off of your grapes before you eat them, or do you bite them in half and then eat them in two halves of a whole? Or do you cut them in half and put them in a dish before you eat them? Or do you freeze them maybe? Or what do you do? How do you guys prefer grapes? What's your favorite format of grape, I suppose? So the reason I chose grapes is I was feeling particularly nostalgic and I wanted to draw some fruit that reminded me of the old fruit trees and bushes and vines that used to grow in the mobile home park where my family used to live. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my great-aunts, when my family moved to this mobile home park, which is in a different state, they had a tangelo tree, they had a lemon bush, and they had grapevines, and my great-aunt had a cherry tomato patch. And those were some of my absolute fondest memories growing up. Those were some of my favorite times looking back, was just going back with my grandma on a Saturday morning. I didn't really do Saturday morning cartoons unless I was with my mom. If she had a weekend off, then I would, have this Saturday morning with a bowl of cereal in front of the TV kind of thing. But when I was with my gran, we would go out in the morning and we would pick tangelos off of her tangelo tree, and then I would help her pick lemons off of the lemon tree and grapes off of the grapevine. And we had a neighbor named Mary, and she was so sweet, and we would give her some of the produce. Obviously, we had so much and we would share it with the whole park, and it was really nice, and it was a really strong sense of community, and it was just such a really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. And my gran used to send me over to Mary's, and she'd be like, "Oh, go bring this over to Mary. Why don't you go bring this to her? I'm sure she'd love to see you." And she was right. Mary always loved to see me, and she would have candy dishes, and she had sugar-free hard candies for herself, but we learned quickly I couldn't do hard candies because I would eat them just like a gummy bear or something. My teeth are jacked the hell up. Anyway, One of the items that stood out to me the most were the grapevines. To this day, I still have never tasted a grape that's really tasted like the grapes off of my grand's grapevines. They were huge and round, and they had like a velvety coat, and the skin came off very easily, but I mean, I actually did like eating the skin too. But it was really good, and it was so sweet, especially when you pick them right off of the vine when they've been in the sun and they've had all the sugars baking in the sun all day. Prime right there. One thing that never really occurred to me as a kid is why those plants were there, why my great aunts and why my gran had those plants. And a big part of why they had those there is so that way it would save on their grocery bill, you know, so that way they would have tomatoes whenever they wanted, tomato sauce, they would have grapes and tangelos and orange juice and lemons. I'm not on a diet or anything, I just really like bell peppers. Just some staples that they could grow that would look nice and that would fit nicely on the lot that they had. They had like a little corner lot, and then my great aunt had a regular little rectangular lot with a really small side lot, and that was her cherry tomato patch. It never occurred to me that it was out of fear of food scarcity and out of a need for food security. Now that I'm older, and I'm also building a garden for myself, now I carry a lot of those lessons with me, and I carry a lot of that with me intuitively, almost. And now I have a greater understanding of why. Okay. So my family and I did not grow up wealthy. Grew up very humbly and very modestly. We were very fortunate, of course. You know, I was a very lucky kid compared to how other folks around me had it. You know, I definitely was better off than some other folks had it, and it could have been a lot worse, but it also could have been a lot easier if money were no object. And I'm sure that that would work that way a lot for a lot of people. So, fast forward, I'm trying to go to college. I'm scared shitless, if I can be honest with you. My school life up until this point has been an absolute nightmare. It's been one horror after another. And I'm the kind of person where if you knock me down, I'm going to keep getting back up. I'm going to keep finding a reason to get back up, and more positivity, and I got to keep pushing, and there's got to be something. There's got to be something, you know. You got to keep digging, because what if you're just 2 more inches away from finding the gold, you know? That's always been my mentality. I don't know if it's really healthy or not, but that's how I've been. So I signed up for my first class at a local community college, and it was an oil painting class. I always really had a passion for art. I also had a passion for music, but mostly I wanted to get into art, and it was a class that my mom and my stepdad were okay with helping me out with as far as like affording tuition. And so I was working part-time, and so that I could afford what I could, and then they matched the other half, which was very nice of them, very generous, and then I did end up paying that back. And so I showed up to my first day of oil painting class. The teacher was not what I had expected. I had this preconceived notion that, you know, she was going to be just like any other art teacher that I had always been told were great and amazing and loves their students and wants them to succeed and will see the potential and try to nourish that potential and bring it out. And this teacher was not like that. This teacher was like Miss Trunchbull from Matilda, if I can be honest. She was a hag, if I can be honest. I have no nice words for her. I have no fear. So, this art teacher, it was our first day. We're in class. She hands out a syllabus. The syllabus for this art class, for this elective course, is 8 pages long, first of all. My English course, my math course, my science course, none of my other courses had syllabuses. I don't remember the plural for that word. College education really went well there. I didn't have any other classes with a syllabus that were that long. And I thought, well, it's just a list of supplies, it's fine. And it had a lot of supplies, and they were expensive, and I didn't have those supplies. I was expecting to have to buy some canvas and some oil paints, maybe some brushes. I had done some research on that, but that was it. And this was asking for so many extras and so many different kinds of canvases and canvas boards and huge canvases and really expensive kinds of things and a very specific kind of oil paint. Like, I couldn't even pick what kind of oil paint that I wanted, and I had already picked out a kind that would have been affordable and fit within my budget, and that just went out the window. And I thought, oh man, this is a bummer. Okay, maybe I can work something out. And so I kind of ignored how my teacher was, because I've dealt with rude teachers my whole life. I've dealt with mean teachers my whole life, and I thought, well, I've dealt with them before. I just have to show them who I am, and I just have to show up. And sooner or later, they're gonna see who I am and that I'm showing up, and they're either gonna get off my case or I'm gonna tell them to get off my case, and it's gonna happen. So my friend and I ended up going to the art supply stores that were in town. We were in a little town, and I went to any art supply store I could find, and I was trying to see if I could afford these art supplies, and I couldn't. They were even more expensive than I thought. So I kind of came back empty-handed. All I could afford was the sketchbook and a pack of pencils for sketching, and I already had a mechanical pencil in my old sketchbook that I had used, but she said I needed these, so I got these. So not only did I go out to all of the art supply stores, which ate up my gas, which was just more money and more of my time, I was also working part-time, so my time is valuable, but it left me feeling really down. And so I came home and I talked to my mom about it a little bit, and I was asking for some advice on what I should do. Should I just drop the class because I can't afford it? And my mom encouraged me. She said, no, you're a very talented artist. You can learn a lot from this class, and we don't want you to just quit if things are tough, so just approach her the next class and just ask her nicely about using some alternate art supplies. Just tell her about some that you found that were more affordable and see if she's willing to make an exception and let you use those. So if any of you aren't familiar with the feeling, telling someone that you can't afford something can be very humbling and humiliating. Even when I knew we couldn't afford things, or that we were lower income, I guess you could say we were pretty poor for a time, I was never embarrassed of that. I've always been quite proud of that, because my family has always made it work. And made it work very well. Like, as a kid, I never went hungry, even though I could see the signs and I could tell that we were struggling. My family made it work so that I never went hungry. And so I was always pretty proud of how my family overcame those obstacles and of their sacrifice. And what was humiliating and embarrassing for me to admit our situation and my struggle to someone else is because when I had to do that, it was normally because I had to tell that to someone who doesn't often understand how someone could be in that position. And when someone doesn't understand how a person could be in that financial position, they normally, in my experience, have been quick to reject that person altogether, or to put them down and just make them feel like they're supposed to feel bad, like I'm supposed to feel ashamed of my family and of where we've come from, which is not okay, just so we're clear. So, with that in mind, I did approach the professor. The next class happened. I waited until it was the end of class, and I mustered up the courage to talk to my professor. I figured, you know what? This is it. If anyone's going to have a student's back, it's going to be the professor, and that's her. So maybe I'm judging a book by its cover, and maybe she just has to be kind of a hard ass on her students because she has a lot of lazy students. This is a painting elective course. Maybe some people take it because they think it's going to be easy or something, Sorry, my voice is kind of going out a little bit. So I approached her and I said, hi, Miss So-and-so. About the art supplies on the syllabus, they're pretty expensive, and I only work part-time, and that goes towards like my tuition and my rent and my gas and my car and everything and all. I'm not sure I can really afford those supplies, but I did find these. Is there any way that I could maybe substitute for these? I will never forget that day. She veered down her half-rimmed glasses at me, and for someone who's a full head shorter than me, I consider that actually to be quite a true feat. And with a cruel sneer, she looks down her nose at me, and she says, "If you can't get the supplies, just say so and drop the class. There are other students who can afford these supplies and would be more than happy to have your place." Just so callous and so mean, and just mean in spirit. She looked me in the eye and said that, and just told me that because I couldn't afford these supplies, I had no place making this art in her class. And so I did something neither of us would have ever expected, and I think what I did will haunt us both to this day. I burst into tears. There were still some other students lingering in the classroom. I think they may have been pretending to put things away, but trying to bide their time to maybe talk to her when I was done. But they were there. So, it was not just me and her, but, I was trying to seize the opportunity. And when she spoke to me like that, after it had taken me that much effort to work up the courage to talk to her and to open up to her about my financial situation and ask for a little compassion and a little compromise on the supplies and their affordability, and that was her reaction, I absolutely cried. I had no words, and I just cried, and I started to pack up my things. And I had been trying so hard to find the art supplies that I could afford and that I could use. Very little. Like, to just be treated like that by someone who was an educator was unfathomable to me, and it made me feel so small and just so unworthy. I didn't know what to say. And so the teacher was shocked, to say in the least. All of a sudden, when the other students were looking at her and looking at me packing up my belongings in a rush, all of a sudden she knew where I suddenly might have some luck finding some discounted art supplies, and suddenly it might not be such a big deal if I used those items. I came home, I told my mom what had happened, and my mother was outraged to hear what an educator had said to a student. She knew her daughter had a passion for education and for art, that her intentions were pure and good, and wanted nothing more than to keep me from that. And she felt horrible because she had encouraged me to do that and made me feel safe approaching the teacher to do that. And so that was hard for her, as my mother. And I think that was one of the first times that I saw on her face that I couldn't hide other people's judgment or cruelty over our financial situation from her and how it affected me. That wouldn't end up being the only issue I had with that teacher, and as it turns out, one of my friends later down the road, it ended up coming up in conversation, and she had that same teacher for a different painting class. I think it was for an acrylics class, and she had a really awful experience with that same teacher as well. Now, that wasn't the first disgraceful teacher I've come across in my time, and I do mean disgraceful, and it certainly wouldn't have been the last. Now, she's far from the worst, but that does not excuse her actions, and that does not make it okay. Should this video make its way to her one day, I hope that professor can see the error of her ways and use it to better herself and her actions moving forward, because her students deserve better. An educator should encourage and uplift their students to see their potential. Teaching students is a wonderful opportunity to encourage the growth of the next generation. Teaching students should be done so in a way which brings out the best in them, not snuffs it out like a flame. You don't tear them down to shreds, especially if it's just for being less fortunate and unable to afford some expensive pieces of wood. With that in mind, if any of you are struggling with finding affordable art supplies, I would recommend going to thrift stores, checking out some of the websites that I've listed below. You can also often find coupons and weekly sale ads for certain supplies, which would make them more accessible to you if you're vigilant and hyper aware of those. It takes a little bit of hard work and a bit of research, but it can be done. The biggest takeaway from this story, if you learn nothing else, is don't let anybody make you feel small. You are always worth more than the size of your wallet, even if someone else has let the size of theirs outgrow the size of their hearts and compassion. Be better. You deserve it. At the end of the day, I am grateful for my upbringing. If it weren't for my grandmother's efforts and my great-aunt's efforts to reduce their spending by growing their food themselves and tending to their own gardens, I might not be able to appreciate the taste of a homegrown tomato or of freshly picked grapes that have been baking in the sun all day. I might not be able to appreciate a hard day's work, or the value of $1, or the value of a good education, the same way that I do now. It's because of those lessons that I'm able to appreciate what my family has been through and what I have been through. I hope to put the same grapevines on a wonderful property of my own one day, so that I can honor and remember my grandmother and the lessons that my family has taught me. And with that, I leave this video. As always, I hope you take care and stay safe, stay hydrated, and make sure you're working on the right layer. Until next time, I'm Moonshine, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!